The Confederate Tribes continues the N.J. Dawood translation of Al-Quran, and I'll be making some adjustments and having some commentary with it as well. I think I should start by saying that Confederate Al-Ahzab implies a sort of autonomy to a degree within the individual parts, but it's a group of people that have an arrangement towards a cause. Perhaps a conglomerated group is the sense. But we're going to show how firmer than that the party of God is. Hezbollah, which again is beyond some political party thing. In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, Prophet, have fear of Allah and do not yield to the unbelievers and the hypocrites. Allah is all-knowing and wise. Obey what is revealed to you from your Lord, for Allah is cognizant of all your actions, and put your trust in Allah. Allah is your all-sufficient guardian. Allah has never put two hearts within one man's body. He does not regard the wives whom you divorce as your mothers. You know, because some people would say, my mom's back, or something like that when they got divorced. And also, you don't throw in, they do it as an insult. So they'd end up insulting their wives and their mothers at the same times. But the idea is your mother is one of those that you would never marry. So, you know, it's basically declaring the woman is unlawful to you. Nor your adopted sons as your own sons. Now, adopted is our English word, but you know, yeah, you're not supposed to adopt them as your family. You take on taking care of them, but these are mere words which you utter with your mouths, but Allah declares the truth and guides to the right path. Name your adopted sons after their fathers. That is more just in the sight of Allah. If you do not know their fathers, regard them as your brothers in the faith and as your cousins. Your unintentional mistakes shall be forgiven, but not your deliberate errors. Allah is forgiving and merciful. The Prophet has a greater claim on the faithful than they have on each other. His wives are their mothers. Allah ordains the blood relations are closer to one another than to other believers. Are immigrants, although you were permitted to do your friends a kindness, that is in the book decreed. Now, the bequest outside of your family share can be up to a third. Other than that, one has no right to will off, that sort of stuff. And Muhajirin was the name of the people who, you know, it's the title. Al-Muhajirin were those who emigrated from Mecca to Medina. And some also, before that, emigrated to Yemen. We made a covenant with you as we did with the other prophets, with Noah and Abraham, with Moses and Jesus, the son of Mary, a solemn covenant we made with them so that he might question the truthful about their truthfulness. But for the unbelievers, he has prepared a woeful punishment. Believers, remember Allah's goodness to you. When you were attacked by your enemy's army, we unleashed against them a violent wind and invisible warriors. Allah saw all that you were doing. They attacked you from above and from below, so that your eyes were blurred, your hearts leapt up to your throats, and your faith in Allah was shaken. There the faithful were put to the proof. There they were severely afflicted. The hypocrites and the faint-hearted said, Allah and his apostle made us promises only to deceive us. Others said, people of Yathrib. Now, it wasn't called the city of the prophet or other such names at that time, and I forget what Yathrib means. You could not stand much longer and go back to your city, and yet others sought the prophet's leave, saying, our homes are defenseless. Whereas defenseless they were not. They only wished to flee. Had the city been entered from every quarter, and had they been roused to rebellion, they would have surely rebelled. but they would have occupied it for only a little while. Before that, they swore to Allah never to turn their backs in flight, and an oath to Allah must needs be answered for. Say nothing will your flight avail you. If you escape from death or slaughter, you would enjoy this world only for a little while. Say who can protect you from Allah if it is His will to scourge you, and who can prevent Him from showing you mercy? They shall find none except Allah to protect or help them. Allah well knows those of you who hold the others back, who say to their comrades, join our side, and seldom take part in the fighting, being ever reluctant to assist you. When fear overtakes them, they look to you for help, their eyes rolling as though they were on the point of death. But once they are out of danger, they assail you with their sharp tongues, covetously demanding the richest part of the booty. Such men have no faith. Allah will bring their deeds to nothing. That is easy enough for Allah. They thought the Confederate tribes would never withdraw. Indeed, if the Confederates should come again, they would sooner be in the desert among the wandering Arabs. There they would ask news of you. But were they with you, they would take but little part in the fighting. There is a good example in God's apostle for those of you who look to Allah on the last day and remember Allah always. When the true believers saw the Confederates, they said, this is what Allah and His apostle have promised us. Surely the promise of Allah and His apostle has come true, and this only increased their faith and submission. Among the believers, there are men who have been true to Allah. Some have died, and others await their end, yielding to no change. Allah will surely reward the faithful for their faith and sternly punish the hypocrites, or show them mercy if He will. Allah is forgiving and merciful. Allah turned back the unbelievers in their rage and then went away empty-handed. Allah helped the faithful in the stress of war. Mighty is Allah, all-powerful. He brought down from their strongholds those who had supported them from among the people of the book, and cast terror into their hearts, so that some you slew and others you took captive. He made you masters of their land, their houses, and their goods, and of yet another land on which you had never set foot before. Truly Allah has power over all things. Prophets, say to your wives, if you seek this nether life and all its finery, come, I will make provision for you and release you honorably. But if you seek Allah and His apostle and the abode of the hereafter, know that Allah has prepared a rich reward for those of you who do good works. Wives of the Prophet, those of you who commit a proven sin shall be doubly punished, and that is easy enough for Allah. Now, Khaybar is one of the other lands. The Jews of Beni Qurayza and our people of the book mentioned, and both those are incidents that show that Islam isn't attacking people because they're of a different faith or something like that. It's because they went to fight us themselves. It's because they supported the people that were out fighting. You know, they lended their financial and such support, not just, you know, people secretly to themselves rooting for one side or the other. And now, well, I don't want to apply it to now, but those of you who obey Allah and His apostle and do good works shall doubly be rewarded. For them, we have made a generous provision. You know, I was going to make a point about the Nazim, about, you know, how they, rather than per se those that they put ahead, you know, if you know what I'm talking about. You know, those who they put as politicians and the sides that they have fight each other so they can have money and power and all that. But wives of the Prophet, you are not like other women. If you fear Allah, do not be too complacent in your speech, lest the treacherous hearted should lust after you. Show discretion in what you say. Stay in your homes and do not display your finery as women used to do in the days of ignorance. Attend to your prayers and give alms and obey Allah and His apostle. women of the household. Allah seeks only to remove uncleanness from you and to purify you. Commit to memory the revelations of Allah and the wise sayings that are recited in your dwellings. Benignant is Allah and all-knowing. Now, the days of ignorance, the emotional ignorance, there's no pre-Islamic age, but some things dominated at one time versus another. And so you just don't learn the revelation, you learn the inspiration as well. You focus on memorizing the revelation, and so this idea that the Quraniyun talk about that people weren't supposed to learn the Quran, that Muhammad wasn't supposed to have any other teaching and all this other stuff, it just doesn't make sense from a Quranic perspective that Muhammad wasn't inspired as well, and that we weren't supposed to learn from his inspiration. It wasn't all words, it was, he had inspired deeds and stuff too. But those who surrender themselves to Allah and accept the true faith, who are devout, sincere, patient, humble, charitable, and chaste, who fast and are ever mindful of Allah, on these, both men and women, Allah will bestow forgiveness and a rich reward. It is not for true believers, men or women, to take their choice in the affairs if Allah and his apostle decree otherwise. He that disobeys Allah and his apostle strays far indeed. Now, it's said that don't let someone say, or don't say, it's not in the Quran. Because if the Prophet said it on religious reasons, then whatever. If he said, this is my favorite food, fetch me this much water or something like that, that's, not an eternal command per se, but you know what I mean. But, as far as if you're going to be a believer, if you find out that this is what the Prophet has said, that this is, whether it's the revealed word or whether it's an inspired teaching, what choice do we have for something? I mean, it conflicts with our being a believer to do anything else. But you're still using your mind. People say, oh, that's mindless following. No, it's not. Because you're being mindful in, You said to the man whom Allah and yourself have favored, keep your wife and have fear of Allah. You sought to hide in your heart what Allah was to reveal. You were afraid of man, although it would have been more proper to fear Allah. And when Zayd divorced his wife, we gave her to you in marriage so that it should become legitimate for true believers to wed the wives of their adopted sons. If they divorce them, Allah's will must needs be done. No blame shall be attached to the Prophet for doing what is sanctioned for him by Allah. Such was the way of Allah with the prophets who passed away before him. Allah's decrees are preordained, who fulfilled the mission with which Allah had charged them, fearing Allah and fearing none besides him. Sufficient is Allah's reckoning. And, I guess it is, yeah, fear God. Okay. Most of the time it's have regard of God, so it's broader than that. But love, fear, and hope, right, are to be your motivations. Muhammad is the father of no man among you. He is the apostle of Allah and the seal of the prophets. Allah has knowledge of all things. Now, his male line died off, so he doesn't have any surviving male heirs, so there wasn't going to be any of this inheritor of the Prophet through that respect. And the Quran mentions Muhammad 4 times. 5 times the kunya, if you include the kunya, Ahmed. So Mohammedanism, or whatever you want to call it, it just doesn't make sense. It's not about Muhammad as a personality. As you saw with this verse, it's not about his lineage. The verse before, it wasn't about him being alive. The path's there, the path was laid down. Whether he's still alive or dead, it's same difference. Believers, be ever mindful of Allah. Praise him morning and evening. He and his angels bless you, so that he may lead you from darkness to the light. He is ever merciful to the true believers. And remember, the he, we're addressing everybody, the humanity. We're not calling God a male. Various other things we should regard. On the day they meet him, their greeting shall be peace, a rich reward he has prepared for them. Prophet, we have sent you forth as a witness and a bearer of good tidings and a warner, one who shall call humans to Allah by his leave and guide them like a shining light. So, the light bringer. And good tidings, so a gospel sort of, but not the Christian connotation of that. Tell the faithful that Allah has bounteous blessings in store for them. Do not yield to the unbelievers and the hypocrites, disregard their insolence, put your trust in Allah. Allah is your all-sufficient guardian. Believers, if you marry believing women and divorce them before the marriage is consummated, you are not required to observe a waiting period. Provide well for them and release them honorably. Prophet, we have made lawful to you the wives to whom you have granted dowries, and the slave girls to whom Allah has given you as booty, the daughters of your paternal and maternal uncles, and of your paternal and maternal aunts who fled with you, and any believing woman who gives herself to the Prophet, and whom the Prophet wishes to take in marriage. This privilege is yours alone, being granted to no other believer. But as we see elsewhere, certain things that people try to claim, it wasn't lawful for Muhammad either. He had to wait for to consume a marriage. He had to get permission to the women to marry. One woman, there's a story that there was a trick that she was told to play a certain way, and Muhammad thought that she wasn't interested and sent her away, because he didn't want to force a woman, because it wasn't dignified to do that. So the idea that Islam has forced marriage, it just doesn't make sense. Sometimes there's opportunity, and whether you get older, are you going to consummate the marriage? Are you going to accept the terms, the financial terms and stuff, or are you not? But yeah, we don't force our slaves, and we don't fight wars to capture slaves. It's an incidental thing that happens with it, but we well know the duties we have imposed on the faithful concerning their wives and slave girls. We granted you this privilege so that none may blame you. Allah is forgiving and merciful. Well, slave women would be the better way to put it, because we're not talking about girls in that respect. You may put off any of your wives you please and take to your bed any of them you please, nor is it unlawful for you to receive any of those whom you have temporarily set aside. That is more proper, so that they may be contented and not vexed, and may all be pleased with what you give them. Allah knows what is in your hearts. He is the all-knowing and gracious. It shall be unlawful for you to take more wives, or to change your present wives for other women, although their beauty please you, except where slave women are concerned. Allah takes cognizance of all things. Believers, do not enter the houses of your Prophet for a meal without waiting for the proper time, unless you were given leave. But if you are invited, enter, and when you have eaten, disperse. Do not engage in familiar talk, for this would annoy the Prophet, and he would be ashamed to bid you go. But of the truth, Allah is not shamed. If you ask his wives for anything, speak to them from behind a curtain. This is more chaste for your hearts and their hearts. You must not speak ill of Allah's apostle, nor shall you ever wed his wives after him. This would be a grave offense in the sight of Allah, whether you hide or reveal them. Allah has knowledge of all things. It shall be no offense for the Prophet's wives to be seen unveiled by their fathers, their sons, their brothers' sons, their sisters' sons, their women are their slave girls. Women have fear of Allah. Allah observes all things. The Prophet is blessed by Allah, and his angels bless him. Then you that are true believers and greet him with a worthy salutation. Those who speak ill of Allah and his apostle shall be cursed by Allah in this life and in the life to come. He has prepared for them a shameful punishment. Those who traduce believing men and believing women undeservedly shall bear the guilt of slander and a gross sin. Prophet, enjoin your wives, your daughters, and the wives of true believers to draw their veils close round them. That is more proper, so that they may be recognized and not be molested. Allah is forgiving and merciful if the hypocrites and those who have tainted hearts and the scandal mongers of Medina do not desist. We will rouse you against them, and their days in that city will be numbered. Cursed wherever they are found. They will be seized and put to death. Such has been the way of Allah with those who have gone before them. You shall find no change in the ways of Allah. And see, as this passage, there's context. Just like the people of Kabar and conduct is like, oh, they're Jews. And no, them being Jews had nothing to do with it. Likewise, those taking part in the persecution and stuff like this shall be given chances. But when it's necessary to save your life and opportunities have been laid down, people ask you about the hour of doom, say Allah alone has knowledge of it. Who knows? It may well be that the hour is near at hand. Allah has laid his curse upon the unbelievers and prepared for them a blazing fire, abiding there forever. They shall find none to protect or help them. On the day when their heads will roll about in the fire, they shall say, would that we had obeyed Allah and obeyed the apostle. And they shall say, Lord, we obeyed our masters and our great ones, but they led us away from the right path. Lord, mete out to them a double scourge, lay on them a mighty curse. Believers do not behave like those who slandered Moses. Allah cleared him of their calumny, and he was exalted by Allah. Believers, fear Allah and speak the truth. He will bless your works and forgive you your sins. Those who obey Allah and his apostle shall win a signal victory. We offered our trust to the heavens and to the earth and the mountains, but they refused the burden and were afraid to receive it. Man undertook to bear it, but he has proved to be a sinner and a fool. So the free will, as people would call it, it's limited will, but it's the trust of the responsibility of your choices, right? Only the humans and the jinn chose that. Other the material creation and the other animals, they were like, no, don't, we don't want this responsibility. Allah will surely punish the hypocrites and the misassociators, both men and women, but to believing men and to believing women, he shall show mercy. Allah is forgiving and merciful. Now we're drawing attention very distinctly to the different genders because they're all involved on the individual level and at the group level.